Welcome to the Everyday Citizens Tactical Podcast, Episode 14, The Red Letter Project. My name is Jeremy and I will be your host. Today I'm joined by Maddy, the founder of the Red Letter Project. Maddy previously served in the United States Coast Guard, is a former MMA fighter, and a huge advocate for women in the Second Amendment community. Now, without further delay, let's dive in.
Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours. Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours.
All right, Maddy, welcome to the podcast. I really appreciate you making it on tonight after your long weekend with Red Letter.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
So for those that may not know from my listeners who you are, do you want to, talk about yourself a little bit, who you are, what you do, and give everybody the stuff?
Yeah, sure. I guess I should probably just mention before we talked about this, but kind of losing my voice. I've been teaching all weekend, so if I sound like, I'm going in and out, that's probably why. I'm not actually sick or anything, but a little bit about myself is I am a full-time firearms instructor. I teach mainly out of my hometown in Georgia. We have a big indoor range down here called Sharpshooters, and they do an awesome job. I also travel around quite a bit teaching classes in different states and kind of collaborating with other instructors and things like that. But the core of my business is basically it's called the Red Letter Project. It's a faith-based business that we basically run large-scale women's retreats where we'll bring out 30 or 40 women, teach them defensive shooting, medical training, and each event is themed out. So, for example, the past few events have been a vehicle-themed event or a night vision theme event or low light or urban safety and survival and things like that. So it's really fun.
Awesome. So where do you get most of your background from? Your source of teaching in a sense.
Yeah, definitely. Well, a couple different things. My shooting background for the most part, I haven't been shooting my entire life, but I used to work for the Coast Guard. That's where I got most of my foundational skills, and then I kind of branched off on the private side as soon as I got out of the Coast Guard. My actual teaching background, though, comes from I actually used to, when I was a little bit younger, help teach scuba diving. I did that for a long time, and that skill of just being able to communicate and transfer information to other people came from diving, and I just kind of mashed it to a different thing I was doing at the time, which just happens to be shooting.
That might be the most interesting background I've ever heard. I don't think I've had anybody on here that says, yeah, I teach because of scuba diving.
Yeah,
that's unique.
Yeah, it's funny. That's what I did for a long time. I used to do a lot of scuba diving. I still do. I just don't teach scuba diving or anything right now. Did a lot of scuba diving, skydiving, bull riding, MMA, things like that, and I kind of grew up around that environment. So shooting was always kind of a background piece until it became really relevant in my life a few years ago, and it just became a huge passion of mine.
Awesome. So yeah. What kind of, you dove into Red Letter a little bit, and I kind of want to start the podcast giving everybody an idea of what that is and kind of promoting it a little bit. What made you kind of come to the idea or the realization that the Red Letter Project and everything that comes along with it was what you wanted to do, and how did you end up there?
Well, a couple things. I guess there's a couple different aspects to this. The reason I wanted it to, first of all, be at least at the moment, women's only, is because in my mind, women should be the most trained demographic on the planet, and they're not. A lot of women don't get the proper training they need because it's not offered to them, or it's offered in a way that's very exclusive. So we wanted to make a very welcoming environment, but even besides that point, the core of Red Letter, it was a faith-based organization for a reason. When I first started teaching full-time a couple years back, I always try to figure out a way to incorporate, spreading the gospel through what I was doing. And it's been on my heart for a long time. I just didn't really have that outlet. I would try to mention it in class when I could, in a, very, open but not, in-your-face kind of way. Mm-hmm. Just being honest with people. And when the actual opportunity to start a women's retreat came about, the first thing that came to mind is how do we put Jesus in the center of this and use this opportunity to do what we're supposed to be doing, which is talking about the gospel and bringing Christians together and welcoming non-Christians and kind of introducing them to that. Mm-hmm. So I actually run the project with my mom, who's also an instructor. So it's actually funny, like me and her do it together. I coordinate, I organize everything, and then she's actually in charge of the Bible study portion itself. So she actually does all of that, like that's her thing at Red Letter, basically.
That's awesome. It's interesting that you bring up faith because I feel like um, some of the people in the industry, this industry specifically, that a lot of us look up to or that hold a much deeper meaning other than just training and kind of more of a morality type base, like John Lavelle from Warrior Poet Society. People like that always kind of revert back to faith as, a big purpose of what they do. So that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the reason I even really became extremely passionate about self-defense and like things like that is because I believe it's like common knowledge in the Bible. Like it gives us very clear examples of like where God values the preservation of human life. He values justice and things like that. It's like, how do we obtain those two things without self-defense? It's like impossible, right? And like a lot of times people want to talk about like the shooting side, the self-defense side, all these things, but it's like, what happens if you can't, you're in one of those situations where you aren't able to become successful in a defensive situation? Like what happens on the other side, right? Like we have to account for that spiritual side, and that's a big part that I think is left out. And the industry for a long time, I think, kind of like rejected religion because it's almost like talked about like politics, right? So if you don't have a purpose in your business, like this is my purpose in my business, and it's like if I don't stand for something, it's like, why am I doing it?
And I feel like sometimes within this community, especially amongst the concealed carry community, whether you're religious or not, there's kind of a shepherd to flock mindset that kind of ties into faith in a sense, even if people aren't religious. We find ourselves to be, protectors and guiders of others who may not, take that seriously or see that amongst themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that is one really cool thing about the community is like the people that are involved in it, they see the importance and the value of being a protector. I think that's really cool because especially nowadays in society, it's becoming more rare.
So with you guys have had, how long's Red Letter Project been around?
So my business itself, it wasn't originally called Red Letter, but I guess I've had it, oh gosh, I'm not good with dates or years or anything, but I think it's been around for like 2.5, 3 years-ish now, maybe. But the actual Red Letter Project retreats have been around since May. We've done 3 officially so far. We did 3 this year.
Nice. So how do you feel like that has affected the female side of the community? And do you think you see good positive change coming from all that?
Yeah, I hope that it has impacted what I think it has. Like for instance, the past couple Red Letters, it's really nice because a lot of times, like as an instructor, you kind of base how successful the project is going based off of retention, right? So like the last 2 Red Letters, like after the initial one, typically what we'll see is about 50% of the students attending the second and third Red Letter were repeat customers or repeat students from the last one, like the previous one. So people are coming back. They're starting to hang out. Like I see them on Instagram all the time, like hanging out in their states that they they go home to their home state and they hang out. They train with these other girls. They communicate online. We stay in touch with each other. People reach out when they need somebody, and like it's hopefully making them feel like they are just as capable as the rest of the guys in the industry. Because honestly, at this point, like some of the chicks that have attended 2 or 3 Red Letters, they are just as trained as half the people I see on Instagram anyway. And I hope that they start to recognize that they are just as at that same level, and it's really cool to watch.
Yeah, two notes kind of on that, and one being as negative and kind of toxic as Instagram and that whole social media community can be. I can definitely say that I have made some really good friends or kept up with really good friends through social media and kind of just co-posting and sharing stories and whatnot, and just tagging each other. It is there is a community sense to that. Is cheesy as that is to say.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's as toxic as social media can be. Like I'll be honest with you, I think like 70%, or if that's like a guesstimated number, like most of my friends in the industry or a lot of the students I have, they came straight from Instagram, and that's how I keep in touch with people. And it's like, as long as you're the one that's in control of that community you're creating on Instagram, like, or on social media or whatever, like it is very possible to, spread positivity through that outlet.
So with, being, in the side of the community with females who, traditionally either don't attend training as much or have not been a part of that community, what are some of the big changes you feel like you've seen from the female side of the community from, 2 or 3 years ago when you really started digging into this to now?
Honestly, like just the level of independence, right? So like a lot of times, like I've been teaching co-ed classes since I started. Like it was funny, like I've always taught guys, but like over the past like maybe year or so, it's funny. Sometimes I'll walk into an intro level class and expect it to be co-ed, and sometimes it'll be all chicks just because I'm a female instructor and they see that, and so naturally I get more females in my class. The cool thing about it is like I saw this kind of shift over the year, or over like the time I was teaching students, from like, hey, I'm dependent on my husband to go out and like buy me a gun and teach me how to shoot, and then versus I'm like taking initiative to bring myself here, and I want to figure out what gear like I want. I don't want somebody else picking out my gear for me, and I want to like attend these things because I want to do it, as opposed to somebody else is forcing me to go do this because they want me to do it. It's instead a personal thing now, and I think that's really important.
And kind of the independence aspect that you talk about there, that's something I tell the women in my life, and then I tell guys in my life who are looking to guide or mentor other women, is that the point of introducing them to this stuff and guiding them and, training them isn't to make them dependent on you necessarily. It's to make them independent. They should not rely on you. They should be self-confident, and have those abilities you apart.
Yeah, absolutely. I like it. It's good for like husbands and brothers and dads and everybody to create that initial spark of like, hey, like this is an opportunity. You should go do this. Like it's okay for that push. Like that's sometimes what people need. But that initial push, like hopefully it sparks them to want to take interest themselves, because like if you force somebody to do, or somebody forces another person to do something, they're not going to be in it for themselves. They're not going to actually like learn or retain what they should, because that purpose isn't behind them. A lot of times too, like they just have to be able to relate to people. So for instance, like sometimes I'll talk one-on-one to a student and be like, hey, this is why this is important, and this is how it could actually apply to you in real life. Because a lot of times, like we live in a bubble in America. We're very protected here, as much as sometimes we don't think we are very protected here. And it's one of those, a lot of times people will kind of walk around with that mentality of like, oh, it'll never happen to me, or like that would never happen in my area. Like I live in a good clean area or whatever. So making it relevant for people, like, hey, like this is something that you should value as well, and this is why.
It's interesting you kind of bring that up. I was going to wait to bring this up till later. I was at a family Christmas party last night, and I was carrying, as I always do. Mm-hmm. And me and one of my cousin-in-laws, my cousin's husband, were talking whatever, and we were talking about guns and whatnot. And my aunt asked why I was carrying at a family Christmas party. I was like, well, what if something happens? She's like, what's going to happen at a family event? Mm-hmm. And like we had a very brief conversation, and it's kind of what you kind of went on there about that. People don't see things for how they are, and they just think they live in this bubble where they are the exception.
Right.
And then second to that, kind of the purpose or motivation behind a lot of this, you kind of started to dive into this. And Mrs. Poet from John Lavelle's wife talks about this a lot, is I find a very big motivator to, learn these types of skills and get involved with this kind of stuff is motherhood. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you knowing you as briefly as I do, you could probably agree that motherhood is a very special thing.
Yeah.
And so, I've talked with females in the past who may not necessarily care about this kind of stuff a ton when they're thinking of just themselves, but when you start talking to them about, scenarios or purpose, when you're talking about, okay, children, our children, so on and so forth, the mindset changes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually kind of funny you bring that up, though, because like I literally had this conversation with one of the girls at Red Letter last night. And I'm single. I'm 24 years old. I don't have kids. I work with my mom though, and so I understand like her level of protection for me. Or I work around with a lot of women that have kids. And I had this conversation with, I forget who I was talking to, but basically the premise of it was like a lot of times as women, that instinct to be like super aggressive and self-protection is not there. Like that switch isn't flipped. However, if you ask the same person, like, would you defend your kids? Right? That mother bear, that mama bear comes out and they're like, oh, heck yeah. Like I would do anything for my kids. And it's like, why doesn't that switch flip in your head for self-protection as well? Because what happens if you can't protect yourself? Like you're not going to be there to protect your kids. So it's like self-protection is just as important as being able to protect the little ones because they rely on you.
And why do you think that is? Because I've noticed that a lot in the past too. You know, they don't see, you know, self-protection as important or, you know, as high as on the totem pole as far as priorities go as, you know, protecting little ones. Why do you think that is?
I don't know, but if I had to guess, again, because I don't have kids, I would have to say it's probably something along the lines of like women are very caring creatures, and a lot of times, like you see them put themselves aside for other people. Like you see them put themselves aside, and jeopardize almost sometimes their safety or their livelihood or like their well-being to take care of others. Like how many times do we see new mothers kind of spiral out of control because they're taking so much care of their kids they forget to take care of themselves. Sure. I think that's like just something that's kind of bred in us, and it's really cool to be able to watch. Like I think again, so one of the perks of like Instagram and stuff is like there are some really powerful mothers out there that are taking care of their kids, but they're also taking care of themselves, and that affects the family too. I kind of look back, like I was actually homeschooled for I'd say pretty much the duration of like all the way up until college. Like I had a few years of public school thrown in there, but for the most part homeschooled, right? Mm-hmm. My mom for the longest time, like when she was my age, she was a pre-Olympic gymnast. She carried and maintained that level of well-being and like that level of fitness and health all the way through, like when she was taking care of me. And that affected how I viewed myself because I was like, when I looked in the mirror, I wanted to be just like her. So it's like by her taking care of herself and her being like a very like bold, independent woman, that made me want to do the same thing. And I think that like I credit that like to what I do now. Like I would not carry myself in the same level of confidence or reassurance that I would if she wasn't the way that she was when I was younger, if that makes sense.
For sure.
So having that role model is like super important. And I think it's like just having that reminder, like also being around other mothers that have that same mindset. Because, you know, you think about, I know when my mom was growing up, or when I was growing up with my mom, she didn't have the same level of time that she did when she didn't have me, because obviously kids take time, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like also being surrounded by other women that think the same way, that kind of hold you accountable, is really important.
And I think, you know, kind of what you talked about there with your mother being a gymnast and whatnot, you know, always holding herself to a higher standard. I think that's something that can really go for both male and females is, mm-hmm. you know, taking care of yourself a little bit more and putting yourself in a position to be self-confident. And I talk about a lot on my page, you know, I mean, fitness is one thing, to be in shape, but there is a mental state and a mentality that comes with taking care of yourself, and that goes beyond the gym. Yeah. Eating well, not perfect, but eating well, drinking water, you know, doing things that help you both physically and spiritually. Right.
Yeah, 100%. Like it can go both ways. And you think about like father-son relationship, right? Like your son probably wants to view the dad as a good role model and be just like him when he grows up. Like that's really important. So it's like maintaining some sort of structure, and like even if that parental figure isn't there, like having some sort of role model or mentor or somebody or friends just even that hold you accountable is really important. Not to kind of like deviate from this, but I feel like this is kind of similar. Like the people that I surround myself with, like the closer they are to me, the better their morals need to be. Like I hold my friends to that standard because I want them to hold me to that standard. And like, I'm fortunate enough to have a really good friend group where, like they'll call me out on things. They'll be like, hey, like, why haven't you been to the gym in a week? And I'm like, I'm just stressed out with work and all these things. And they're like, well, have you taken care of yourself at all this week? That's probably why you feel like that. Mm-hmm. And I do the same thing with them. I'm like, hey, dude, like, we haven't hung out in like 2 or 3 weeks. Like, what's going on? We need to sit down and like just have a check-in and like, you know, go get dinner or something or watch a movie and just like, you know, be around other like-minded human beings. Like that is so important. And that's honestly something that I strayed away from for a long time, and I felt it. Like as I got a little bit older, like I realized how important having those like accountable, like really good friends are.
And I find being surrounded by people, again, male, female, it doesn't really matter, that you do surround yourself with people that are going to hold you accountable and that are going to be good role models. I tell my guys all the time, the guys I hang out with locally, train with them, all that kind of stuff, I say, your responsibility is to your family and your friends, and they look up to you, and it's not fair to them for you to half-ass something.
Yes. Yeah.
For you to not put in the work. And then in turn, you all are my responsibility, and it's not fair to you guys for me to half-ass something. And then it's a circle that goes around motivating each other and holding each other accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you're right, male or female. Like I have like obviously the industry I work in, there are a lot more dudes than there are chicks, so I have a lot of guy friends. Part of my friend group here in Georgia is like I have a few buddies, like a couple instructor friends, a couple friends that are just kind of like gun self-defense style people. Like that's kind of what they value. We hold each other accountable too for like forcing each other to go out and train sometimes, because like if you do it for a living, you come home from work, you don't want to do more training. Like you want to just sit down and like just not do anything basically. And our friend group, we kind of were just like, hey, let's plan a weekend where we go into the woods and like camp and like make our own food and maybe throw a couple training things in there. Not a stressful weekend, but like let's just make sure that all of our kit and stuff works. Do those kind of use of force like run throughs where we're talking about things and like talking about scenarios, and it's like good conversation. And there's a lot of value in that. And there's a lot of value. I know like when we talked like last week, you were saying that you were going in the woods for 1 week, and I had just gotten back from being in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so funny because like there's so much value in just going outside and like figuring things out and like learning new skills and stuff like that. And I've actually been thinking about doing like a red letter edition, like not an overlanding one, but like more of like I don't know. We kind of are for the next February one, I guess. We just didn't title it camping because we're not camping. They're gonna be staying in like these super nice cabins, but like basically what it is we're gonna be doing a little bit of like water reclamation, a little bit of like how do you build a fire, how do you change a tire, like how do you keep yourself alive in the wilderness if you don't have cell service, like and something goes wrong when you're hiking. Like those kind of topics are gonna be like kind of the main focus of the next red letter. In addition, we're also doing some like use of force scenario type work where like we'll actually have role players and like airsoft guns, like things like that, where they can actually trial and error the skills that they've been learning at the previous red letters or the skills that they learned like at the beginning of the day in February. And so that was kind of the direction I wanted to push this next one. And then maybe one day we'll have an actual camping red letter. I don't know if people would come for that, but I would be a huge fan.
That's awesome. I think there is definitely a balance to, training and then just relaxing and enjoying the things that come with training. Like you said, like going in the woods and just taking it light.
Yeah.
And to new people, sometimes, like I know one thing I kind of struggle with my fiance is getting her to understand that though we may be doing something that has a purpose, it doesn't necessarily mean it's training. And I know other people have struggled with that in the past. Going on a hike can be relaxing, but it could also be a workout at the same time.
It's productive. It's just being productive. Yeah, definitely. And like, let's say you think about even too, like the daily things that you consume, right? So like if you want to sit down and watch TV, that's totally fine, but it has to be a balance. It can't be a 6-hour binge on TV. It needs to be like, 30, 40 minutes here and there, a couple shows or whatever, or like you're consuming something that's healthy and like you enjoy, but it's also you're learning at the same time, or it's a productive way of like relaxing, because one of the hard lessons that I've been learning the past like couple years, especially with the relatively still, I guess you could still consider it a new business, is the fact that my brain wants to be actively doing something like 24/7, and I've been like this since I was like 15 years old, and it's like eventually like you'll burn yourself out if you do that for long enough periods of time. Like you have to be able to take those breaks, but those breaks don't have to necessarily be lazy breaks. They can be productive. You just do it in a way that makes sense.
Oh, I get it 100%. I work myself like a dog.
Yeah. And it's sometimes you're like, man, I'm definitely good. Like that.
I physically cannot sit down for long periods of times and not do something.
Yeah.
I've got maybe 30 minutes to an hour of me and sitting down and not doing something, and that's if I worked all day.
Yeah, yeah. I could not agree more. Like, I will absolutely go insane. Like, the only thing I can really sit down and just, like kind of turn my brain off with is, like, a couple of my favorite movies, maybe, and I hardly ever even do that. It's more just reading books. Like, reading books is, for me, a really good passive way to relax, because it's, like, I feel like I'm doing something because I'm learning, but at the same time, like, gives my body a chance to, like, chill out.
I'm a Marine, so I can't read. I can't
You
relate.
can't read so good.
So I kind of want to dive into a little bit more female-specific related topics, and then even hopefully it helps guys with women in their lives.
Sure. Yeah.
So what are some? I guess we can kind of start from the beginning. What are good positive routes that aren't too pushy or don't make it seem too complicated? What are things that women or men can get their women to do to kind of start moving them in the direction of having that self-protection mindset and getting them towards wanting to work on, different skills, whether that just be fitness, firearms and dry firing, martial arts. We could talk about martial arts if you want to. I can talk about that for hours. So, what are some good, positive, non-overwhelming ways guys can get into that kind of stuff?
I would say, like, as, like, kind of, I don't want this to come off as, like, mean or anything, but, like, I think a lot of times when, so I teach a lot of people, like, per week, right? Like, I teach full time. I usually have contact with maybe 20, 30 students a week here in my local area. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you how many times, like, someone has come in and been like, my husband forced me to come here, so I don't want to be here, but we're going to get through this because he made me come. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of rough, because it's like, at that point, luckily, I'm able to relate to them and be like, hey, listen, okay, like, I know you're here because you don't really want to be here, but, like, let's make this fun and kind of change things around. And usually those are the people that actually end up coming back. What I would say is just being, like, aware that the more, I guess, like, the more you give them the creative freedom to choose for themselves is the best way to do it. Maybe, like, introducing them, the best way in my mind is to introduce them to somebody that already has that mindset that also is a girl. Like, finding, like, a martial artist that, like, a female martial artist that, like, teaches at a local gym or something, or, like, female instructor in your area, and just, like, at least introducing them to them. Because a lot of times, like, that instructor or, like, that female, or even if she's not an instructor, like, another just, like, general shooter or whatever, like, they can do the work for you and kind of talk to them out on a different level, because, like, there's a difference between, like, convincing somebody to do something and just, like, from that standpoint, and just, like, welcoming somebody into the community, if that makes sense. So, like, if the best thing I think a guy can do for a girlfriend or fiance or something like that is by making those connections and just allowing them to happen naturally and organically, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard it from my fiance in the past. If we talk about, like, with other people that we've been doing something training, we're talking to our other firearm couple friends or whatever. She's like, it feels like he's just teaching me, which I am teaching her, but at the same time, I don't want her to have, like, a time for training with Jeremy type thing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's definitely a balance beam to find with that, and it kind of goes back to your first example. Guys, don't make your significant other go on these long day, big training event type stuff. Like, that should be something they want to do.
Right. And, like, I think a lot of times too, again, the beauty of social media is I also have a lot of times where, like, a guy will find my page and they'll message me. They'll be like, hey, your page is awesome. I want my girlfriend to attend your retreat. And I'm like, heck yeah, that's awesome. Put me in touch with her. And then they make that introduction over, like, DMs or something, or their fiance or their wife or whoever will follow me on Instagram, kind of watch the page and see that, like, there's more to it than just, like, super tactical, like, male dominated stuff. And, like, oftentimes they'll end up reaching out to me, and then, like I said, I can take care of the work from there on. The retreats, the nice thing about them is, since it's all women, they don't mind, it's a long training day. Like, we'll do the first Saturday, like, Saturday this past weekend was, I think, 12 hours of training, and then the second day was a little bit shorter, but it was still, like, a lot of training. But it didn't feel like that because it's done in a way that's, like, I guess, like, conducive to what they're looking for, I guess. Like, we try to make it relevant for them. So it's like, having them make that connection is really, really important. I guess is just what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. And connections are huge, male or female.
Yeah.
Being able to relate to individuals and establish, a connection, a friendship is always going to, get them to want to be involved. It's all about them motivating themselves. It's the old saying, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Right. Definitely.
And I can confirm, you can't make your horse drink water.
Yeah, I'm looking at your Skype profile picture because it's right on my screen. And I'm like, yeah, that was a good reference. But yeah, like you definitely can't push somebody to do something they don't want to do, but you can definitely inspire them to at least think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with that, kind of moving along, a female finds themselves kind of starting to get into this. They're interested, so on and so forth. What are some daily changes, adjustments, thought processes do you think they should adapt into their life? Because there are some principles of things that should be applied male or female, but sometimes there are things that should be female specific or male specific, whatever that is. So what are some things females should definitely look for in their daily lives to kind of integrate this kind of stuff?
Yeah, definitely. I would say like just at a very simple, basic level, and this goes for everybody. This even goes for like people like you and me who do this like for a living and kind of like think about this a lot. Like, I think the first building block is just starting by becoming more like connected with what you're doing on a daily basis. Meaning like, I don't know how many times in my life I've probably woken up, gone to the gym, and then headed to the grocery store on the way home, picked up groceries or whatever, and then came home and did that kind of like on autopilot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like becoming more connected and like consciously thinking about what you're doing throughout your day, like that's the first step, because it's like, how many times do you have contact with a stranger throughout the day, or potential contact with a stranger? How many times do you get in and out of your vehicle per day? How many times do you walk in and out of a store without looking, or look around at your surroundings? Like how many times do you visualize something actually happening throughout your day? And I think that level of like just kind of like starting to become more connected with your daily process is really important, because that's the first place I usually, like a lot of times when I have clients, they'll come in and we'll just kind of talk about like their day and like kind of what their typical lifestyle looks like, and where we can start to make those positive changes for like being more aware and being more ready for self-defense. So that's a good place to start. If you don't even want to like touch a weapon, you don't want to touch like martial arts, you don't want to touch any of that stuff yet, at least start thinking about like the places that you're potentially vulnerable throughout the day, and like how you could maybe start like reinventing those processes, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a good point there, that there is so much more to all of this than just the weapons or the fighting or the fitness. I mean, the mindset portion of this makes or breaks absolutely everything else you tie in with it.
Yeah, and I would also say too, like this might kind of go back to your first question that you asked before this one. A good way to also get people kind of involved in self-defense, as weird as it sounds, is like start them off with medical training. The reason I say that is because like you can very easily convince somebody why medical training would be important. Like the easiest thing to do is say, what happens if your kid chokes on something? What happens if your daughter gets in a car crash? What happens if you get in a car crash? What happens if somebody, is running around the woods and falls on something? Like, it's very easy to talk about medical training and get somebody in a medical class. And that's a very good segue into defense itself, because you know more than anybody that defense is more than just shooting.
Absolutely. And not to plug myself, but you bring up a good point on medical, and that's something we stress in our medical response one class, is that throughout the class, a lot of our students are young, male, tactical minded in a sense,
mm-hmm.
and the overwhelming majority of medical scenarios and injuries that we discuss do not involve firearms or active shooters.
Yeah, 100%.
Because there's so much throughout your daily life, knowing both from personal experience, then also professional experience. There's so much that goes on in daily life, and you have zero control of knowing when that is going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like medical training can be very simple. Like it can be very as simple as like knowing how to wrap a wound, or knowing how to apply a tourniquet. Like I've taught 12-year-olds how to do that. I'm sure you have too. And it's like even in addition to that, right, you have the medical training. And then you have the other stuff. This past weekend at Red Letter Project, we did, I basically taught my travel safety course. A lot of my background, I didn't mention this earlier, but like a lot of my background comes from living overseas and solo traveling all over the place, like in foreign countries and different states and like all these different places. Like I did a lot of like foreign overseas solo travel. And with that came a lot of little techniques and tips and like things I started looking for being a 5'1" female in a foreign country that I didn't know, right? So it's like this travel safety class, I've taught it to colleges, I've taught it to businesses, like, you know, just various groups. And I wanted to bring it to Red Letter because it's like I wanted them to start thinking about more than just shooting. For instance, like we did a whole scenario-based exercise where I had like 5 or 6 role players staged as Uber drivers, and they had to go through a series of questions and checks, basically talking to the Uber driver and like give it basically at the end of it like a yes or no of whether or not they would actually get in that Uber car or not. Because people don't realize is people get sexually assaulted in Ubers all the time. They get kidnapped. They get get in car crashes and stuff because the driver's acting reckless or whatever. And that's something we don't always talk about. The second thing we did this weekend, among other things, there was a lot going on, but like we also I bugged out my staff cabin with like hidden cameras and stuff. And I had the girls go search, basically with their flashlights, go search for those hidden cameras. Because nowadays, like surveys are kind of showing that 1 in 10 people find hidden cameras in bathrooms and bedrooms in Airbnbs and hotels. So it's like, how often do you think about that when you travel? Little things like that, and looking for like man-sized spaces where people could be hiding, or two-way mirrors, things like that. It's one of those things like you don't think it would ever happen to you, but like that passiveness is what's going to get somebody hurt. So it's like not just the medical training, not just the shooting stuff, but it's also just becoming more like aware, like I said, of what you're doing every time you leave the house, basically.
And I'm glad you brought all that up, because I've been thinking about a point for a couple minutes and just thinking about time to bring it up. You know, I tell, you know, women a lot, not just women, you know, men as well, but women specifically, that, you know, you do not have to conversate with somebody if you do not feel comfortable. You do not have to be nice to somebody. You don't have to stand right on top of somebody. If you're in a bar, you're in a grocery store, it doesn't matter where you are. You know, you do not have to, you know, feel like you have to be polite and respectful. If you feel uneasy, you feel unsafe, gain a little bit of distance between you and them. You don't have to talk with a stranger face to face. You can keep 3 or 4 feet of distance, maybe more, between you.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were talking about that quite a bit this weekend, where like you don't like stop being nice, basically. Like I know, especially like being a female, it's like our nature is just to want to be like loving and caring, and like we don't want to be awkward, we don't want to be weird, we don't want to like make somebody feel weird or whatever. But like I've gotten to the point now in my life where it's just like I don't care. Like I'm gonna like make eye contact, I'm gonna stand up just like straight, and I'm also going to use my voice if I need it. Like I remember this one time, my mom, she's even shorter than me. She's a tiny little chick, but she's awesome. She's like she scares the crap out of me, and I know she doesn't look like it, but she's my mother. But anyway, but she was walking my dog in like some hiking area near our house or something like that, like in our hometown, and she was telling me that like on this trail there was this guy following her. He probably wasn't following her, he's probably just on a walk as well, but like he was just close enough to where it made her uncomfortable. And as soon as like she kind of in her mind created this boundary of like, if he gets like within 10-15 feet of me, I'm gonna turn around and say something. And as soon as he crossed that threshold, even though he didn't like look like he was doing anything wrong, it was making her uncomfortable. She turned around and she like yelled at this dude. She was like, "Get away from me, you're freaking me out." And like the guy turned around and left. And it's like, you will never know if he was actually there for malintent, but like she didn't have to find out because she wasn't afraid to use her voice. And most people are not used to confrontation, they don't like it. So that makes her, just by using her voice and saying like, "Get away from me," and not being nice, it prevented her from being a soft target. Because
Absolutely.
It's like, how else is this guy gonna know that she's not gonna put up with it, you know?
Yes. Posture, eye contact, and use of volume are some of the biggest non-lethal weapons anybody has at their disposal.
Yeah, like that. Eye contact is really important. Like, don't be afraid to be weird. I will like literally stare somebody down at a gas station because I just don't care. It's just like at this point I'm just like, I don't care. And then secondly, like a use of a flashlight, right? So technically, it's not illegal to like identify something with a flashlight. You have something that has enough lumens on it, you can definitely make a point. You can identify what's going on. You're also at that point you're putting yourself in a position of not being as vulnerable because you can see, and then also like that can be used as a less than lethal use of force option. And it can also like just majorly it's just a deterrent, right? So a lot of the chicks that I've come in here, if they're not ready to conceal a gun yet, I'm just like, okay, here's the first step is like go ahead and start concealing this little pocket flashlight. And like have that with you at all times, and like this is how you use it, and that's really important too, I think.
It's funny you bring up that flashlight. The other night I used my flashlight in that exact sense. So I live on just a country road or whatever, and I have to cross the street and walk, I'd say 10, 15 yards up the road to get to my mailbox.
Yeah.
I came home the other night after dark, went down the hill, across the street, and as I was walking towards my mailbox, this old beat up car drove probably about 15 yards past me, just past the mailbox and myself, and I saw them throw the reverse lights on, and it immediately caught my eye. I was like, well, that's weird.
Yeah, like that happens.
I'm on the bend, so it's not normal for people to come to a stop on the bend, and they started coming in reverse. So my first instinct was to back up 5 or 6 yards into my neighbor's driveway. I pulled out my flashlight and I held it in front of my body with my light illuminated. I was able to kind of tuck my sweatshirt behind my concealed carry just in case whatever was going to happen. But they would not be able to see me just from me silhouetting my entire presence with that white light. And then they're like, oh, you need a ride? I was like, oh, well, no. Thank you for being kind.
Yeah, I appreciate it, but no. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, they make so many good lights nowadays. Like they got like so many brands where, it's like a good, reliable light. It's going to be super bright. And you at that point you can trust your gear. So it's like that's like something that flashlights they're not cheap, but like it's worth it, right? And like I said, even somebody that has a gun on them, you need a flashlight regardless. So that's the first thing you can kind of invest in money wise, I guess. Like I would choose having a flashlight over pepper spray or one of those what are those things like the tactical pins. I would choose a flashlight over like I don't know, just my point is like also too, I've traveled all over the world with a flashlight and TSA has never taken it from me. What I couldn't have when I was living overseas, I got my master's degree in England and I lived there for about a year. What I couldn't have when I was over there was my gun, a knife, any sort of weapon, no pepper spray, nothing along those lines. The only thing that was like, not consider a weapon at that point was a flashlight. And then also obviously my martial arts background. So it's like those two things come in play when you can't have that weapon on you. So it's really important to know how to use it too.
And there's so much, this is kind of diverting from the topic, but there's so many, it makes me mad how many cheesy products there are that,
yes,
target new individuals or specifically women. Like I hate seeing small pink pepper spray crap on
or the
shelves.
little cat ear things. Like, oh my gosh, I'm glad you brought this up. Like, not to get on a rant, but like I've seen like so many of those like kind of objects that they make, and I'm like, you're gonna get more people hurt with that than you are like protecting them, and it gives them that false sense of security. They're like, okay, I'm walking in my car and I got the little plastic, I'm talking about the little plastic cat ear things. Like I got those in my hand, or I got my keys between my knuckles or whatever it is, and it's like if you've ever actually tried to use that like in a training setting, you're gonna tear your hands up. First of all. Second of all, it's just not effective, right? And also how many people that own those things actually train with them in trial and error and like run that gear. And it's like that false sense of security is purely a marketing scam, and it drives me nuts.
And I think, with that fake sense of self-confidence with like the pepper spray or the cat ears or the key between the knuckle, that comes from, I hate to say it like this, but like a place of ignorance, because they don't understand why that doesn't work or why that's not beneficial. I have given my younger sisters that have turned 18 in the past pepper spray, and that's literally because I know there's no way in hell I'm going to get them to do anything to be more productive. It's just something I've had to accept in my life.
Right.
So I was like, if I can do this as the absolute bare minimum, fine. But if you are pushing this as the answer, you're coming from the wrong
Yes,
place.
exactly. So it's like that. It's that balance, right? If that's the only thing you can get them with is like pepper spray or something, that's totally fine. But the problem is like, um, the vice versa mindset of I've had girls come in the range before and be like, okay, I used pepper spray for a long time as an excuse to not go get firearms training because I don't like guns, or I was afraid of guns or something like that. It's like it cannot serve as a replacement. But in certain cases like that, if that's the only thing you can get somebody on, yeah, of course that's better than nothing. But a lot of times that marketing gets people to where they're like, oh, if I have pepper spray, I don't need a gun, I'm fine. And that's where the danger happens. You know what I mean?
Where do you think this sense of fear or misunderstanding comes with females and guns? Because most men, even if they don't understand guns or they know how to handle a gun, most of them aren't going to be necessarily scared or uncomfortable, but it tends to be that women are scared or want nothing to do with them or have this fear of firearms. Where do you think that comes from, and how do we overcome that?
I think a couple things. I think first of all, it comes from mystery. Like they don't really understand it. First of all, like they don't understand why the gun is making that sound. They don't understand why that recoil is happening. At some point, they might have had an experience when they were a little bit younger of almost being treated as an object where, like I've been at industry events where before anybody even knew who I was, like some random dude came up to me and like almost just wanted to see if I could handle the recoil of whatever the heck he had in his hand, right? They're like, oh, try this. And it's like, that's stressful for anybody. If you had a bad experience when you were younger because somebody was forcing you to do something you weren't comfortable with, or you weren't quite sure, you didn't understand something, like you didn't understand what the tool was going to do, that could create a little bit of fear. And I think a lot of it has to do with upbringing, right? So like, for instance, let's just say like personally, like I know I'm kind of on that tomboyish scale, obviously, like I like like if you can't tell, like I like overlanding, I like my shooting stuff. I do have a huge feminine side, but you can't really see that because of the business I run, right? And not everybody is like that. A lot of times the upbringing looks very different, right? So for instance, like my brother, when I was growing up, my dad taught him most of the like kind of like outdoorsy stuff. He was taught like more of the, I guess, like how to fix your truck kind of thing, like those like more like male dominated areas. Whereas like me and my mom, we were focused on other things, like and when I got to a certain age, I realized like when I wanted to start overlanding because it was going to help me with my job to get to some of these ranges, I was like, wow, I don't know how to fix my truck, right? Like I don't know how to do any of these things. And so like I kind of like relied on learning later on in life to learn how to like have those skills, I guess, for my own. And I think that happens with the gun stuff too, right? So like a lot of times, like maybe the brother in the family gets taught how to use the firearm when they're younger, and instead of teaching the daughter, instead she's just handed a firearm and told to shoot. Whereas the son may have been taught to load and unload and get a proper grip, a proper stance, all these fundamentals. Whereas the girl was just given a preloaded gun and told to point at the target, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
For sure. And we're preaching to the choir here, but I think that really emphasizes the importance of having both a man, a father figure, and a woman, a mother in the household, and specifically for the female counterparts, being able to balance that side of masculinity, quote unquote, in a sense, not a very good proper term, but getting that self-confidence and self-protection, everything, the things that we normally see as a male-dominated field, but also being able to embrace their feminine side and whatnot, and embrace what makes them special. Yeah,
absolutely. It's very important. Like there is a balance, and it's like with relationships and stuff like that. Like you have to be able to like show that feminine side, but at the same time, like there's a balance of having a certain level of skill and being confident with that skill. And sometimes that even allows you to bring out that feminine side, right? Like this is a really stupid example, but like at my local range, when I teach intro level classes, most of the time I'm wearing my old rodeo jeans that have little sparkles on the side, and mom's usually wearing her tennis shoes that have little sparkles on the side. And it's like just one of those small ways that we remind ourselves that we're powerful females. Like I'm a female, I'm just in a male dominated space, and like that is totally fine. And it's like embracing both of those things is important. But that, like I said, that's just a really small, like kind of dumb example, but it's just like one of the small things that reminds me who I am, I guess.
And I'd like to point out to the women listeners of this is that we're not trying to tell you that you need to be the tactical go-getter or warmonger.
Yeah.
That's not going to be for everyone. Maddy is an MMA firearms instructor, just absolute badass. And there are extremes of everything in every side, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you need to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Find what you're comfortable doing and find what makes you happy.
Yeah, find your balance, right? Like at Red Letter, it's so funny. We have such a diverse group most of the time. Like we'll have, for instance, one of my best buds, Lindsay. You know Lindsay. Remember she was up at the Ohio class?
Oh, yeah.
When you guys rolled up to my portion of teaching, you saw that there was a big difference between me and Lindsay, right? Lindsay's like wearing pink and she has like super pretty long blonde hair, and like I'm like over there in like a black t-shirt and I got all my gear on, and it's like
Did Lindsay ever tell you about the questions I came up and asked her?
No, she didn't. I don't think she did.
You were off. You had came up and told you came up and told me something while we were doing some of those warm up drills, and then you had went off to instruct somebody else, and I had questions about what we were doing or something. So I went over to Lindsay and was like, I went on like a 9-sentence rant about something you had said, and then what I thought, and I was like, so what do you think? And she just looked at me. She had no idea what the hell I just said. It was in that moment I realized that she was not an instructor.
She was there for support. She did a great job. That's funny. Yeah. Lindsay's awesome. She listens to your podcast all the time. So what's up, Lindsay? But
oh, yeah, what's up, Lindsay?
But yeah, there's a very distinct, like, you can do all these things, but you don't have to be like the super tomboy chick, like the girls at Red Letter. It's like there's just such a diverse, like everybody can do the same stuff. You just don't have to do it in the same way, if that makes sense. Like you don't have to have the same type of personality. Like you don't have to be like these type A, type B. Like who cares about that kind of stuff? Just get the skills that you need to be safe and like take it into your own hands. And then add your flair to it. Like add your own style, add your own personality. That's what makes you special. It's not so much like what you can and can't do. Like that's more of a personal thing. So you don't have to change like your whole like way of viewing yourself or whatever to be a protector. That's not how it works, I don't think. Like we got some pretty badass moms that come to Red Letter, and they don't even view themselves as that. Like they are, because of just how they structure their life, and they're like these moms that like are taking initiative to go learn how to shoot and go learn how to like protect their kids and all these things. Like to them, they're just like trying to learn, and I'm sitting there thinking like, that's such a cool mom, like that's so cool, but they don't even realize it. Like, so it's just kind of funny.
So one other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and this is something I find more heavy on the female side than the male side, is how do I word this? I want to use the word complacency in a sense, but it's not quite the right word. I'll give you a scenario. So recently, when it's been colder out, my house has a wood-burning stove, and for some reason, if the wood-burning stove dies down in the middle of the night and it gets colder in the back corners of our house, there's one window alarm that will go off sometime between like 2 or 3 in the morning. It's usually when the house gets down to around 61, 62 degrees. Wood-burning stove's dead.
Yeah.
So the house alarm will go off. So the first night that it happened, I was home. I immediately jumped out of bed, gun, clear first floor, go to alarm panel, see that it's a window break alarm. I go to that window. It's not broken. All right, cool, false alarm. Turn it off, go back to bed. The very next night, I'm at the firehouse, and the same thing happens again, only my fiance is home. And, after that, I came home the next day and was like, what did you do? Because I knew in my head what she had did, but I wanted to talk her through it.
Yeah.
She's like, I walked up, I went over to the alarm, blah, 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 shut it off, went back to bed. So long story made short, she immediately just stood up out of bed, walked into the open outside of the safety of the bedroom where her gun is and the dog is, and just went straight to the alarm panel. No situational awareness in a sense, just complacency.
Mm-hmm.
How do we change that mindset? Because I have noticed it's harder to change that mindset with women than it is with men.
I think like there's a couple ways to do it in my mind, just right off the rip. But biggest thing for me is like doing walkthroughs, like doing visualization, like walkthroughs, like
Mm-hmm.
being like kind of sitting down and being like, hey, if this, for example, was to happen, this is what I would want you to do, and like actually walk them through it. Because a lot of times, like, I think a lot of times ignorance comes from, and complacency comes from, literally not knowing what to do, right? Not having the training to do it. If they've never been trained to get up and like grab their firearm and grab their flashlight and like look for something, they're not going to do it. So it's like having them physically obtain some form of muscle memory of doing that is important. It doesn't have to be all the time, but like maybe once a month have your fiance do a couple scenario based like exercises, and it can be super chill, more of like just a conversation between you two, with you walking through the house and like showing her places that she should look, and like or even like teaching her to like grab the phone, grab the firearm, grab the flashlight, go bunker herself in a place that she feels safe. And like, there's different ways of doing it, of course, but like having some sort of plan is the most important thing.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, I do feel like, and we do that sometimes. I probably do need to do like a little. I've talked to her in the past, like, this is what you should do, but I've never done a walkthrough. So that's a really good point. I should probably do like, I literally want you to touch things and walk places.
Yes, like actively have them do it. Because you think about it, like, there's been so many cases of not even just shootings. Like, let's take, for instance, there was a stage fire. You might have heard this story. I might be rambling on a little bit, but like, this is one of the things I talk about in my travel safety class. Like, I think in about 2003 or something like that, there was a stage fire that broke out at a concert, and I think it was like 100 or so people died, right? There were, and there's different stories out there, and like, I don't know exactly if like which facts are exactly correct or whatever, but the main premise of it is like there were multiple exits in the building, right? But everybody in the concert had come in through one door. They went in through that one door, went straight to the dance floor, whatever it is. And then when the concert stage caught fire, every single one of those people, the only exit that they were aware of, even though there was other exits in the building, ran straight to the one that they had initially come in through, right? And the reason being is because that's the only muscle memory that they had. The diagrams and like the floor plans and stuff, they have all this stuff online that kind of demonstrates like what actually happened that night, but they basically show there's all these other exits right next to them, like right in front of them, basically right in front of the concert stage floor. And there's very few people that actually went to those exits, because when they panicked, they reverted to their lowest level of training. Like, the lowest level of training had basically been them walking through that door. So I tell my college girls, like, I'm like, hey, when you go into a restaurant, or when you go into like your school or whatever it is, like, take the extra couple seconds to like put your stuff down and go just real quick, like walk to that exit, or like walk past it, or like at least visualize it, do something to where like your brain's like, hey, if something happens, I can go there instead of there. Because what happened at that stage fire is every single one of those people fled through the same exit, got caught up in a choke point, and they died of smoke inhalation or being crushed or whatever it was. And it's really sad. But a lot of the people in the post interview were talking about how from that point on, if they were a survivor, they were constantly looking for their exits. And as common sense that sounds, because I know people talk about that kind of stuff all the time, how often do you actually see people set their stuff down and then go walk to the exit and come back and continue on about their day, right?
It's interesting you bring that up. If I remember correctly, that was the Station nightclub fire in Rhode Island. They talk about that in the Fire Academy.
Yes.
There was a lot of fire codes and regulations that came of that, and I think what they found was that the Station nightclub, all of the exits that were interior, they weren't labeled with red glow up exit signs.
Right.
And that was like one of the big things that came at that was new like inspection regulations and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about too, like those regulations, right? Like in a house, a house is a little bit different. Let's just say, for instance, a house that you're not familiar with, like an Airbnb, right?
Yeah.
There's not going to be glowing red exit signs in those doorways, right? So like maybe having a little bit of plan when you get to your hotel room or your Airbnb or something like that, like walking those exits, or just take, for instance, like you said, like in your house, like maybe not so much exits, but more talking about like plans in case somebody were to break into your house, right? That visualization and actually walking those pathways is still equally as important. Because you're right, like those regulations weren't there, but it definitely showed us exactly what would happen if people panic in mass amounts like that.
Sure.
Also, this is not, I'm sure you know this as well because you're a firefighter, but like just a little tip that is in my brain because I always talk about this in the class anyway is, to my understanding, it's there's some sort of like regulation now where every commercial kitchen has to have an exit. Is that correct? Like you've heard that same thing?
Yes, almost, and it will vary state to state.
Mm-hmm.
But all rooms basically need an exit, and if that room does not have an exit to the exterior, the room that room leads to has to have an exterior exit. So like
Right.
kitchens always have that back door, and they have to be labeled red glow exit signs.
Yep, exactly. So if all else fails, right, you don't have a plan and something happens, at least if you know where the kitchen is, go there or like go somewhere that like you know that everybody else is not going to be going because crushing is a problem. Like things happen where when large crowds get spooked, what happens? And you know, you could go on and on. Like I could talk on and on about this topic, but like you kind of get the point of just like visualization. I think is really important, and actually doing like mental walkthroughs.
Another big benefit to doing your walkthrough, and we talk about this even during the medical class that we teach, is that you also want to try and find and identify safe areas and whatnot. That could be for two reasons. Either A, there's an active shooter and you are hiding, or you've moved casualties to a place to hide until you can get out, or there's a fire and you're unable to escape and you want to barricade yourself into some sort of smaller room or you know, whatever that may be, to put some distance and some object between you and a fire.
Yeah.
Two big aspects that come from you just doing that simple walk around.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like not to like obviously. Actually, probably shouldn't even bring up this topic, but like I bring this up because in the class that you had taken for me, right, we had run a couple stage plans, right? When we did that walkthrough, how much more comfortable did you feel when you shot that stage because you already kind of knew where you at least wanted to go? You might not have you might not have executed it perfectly.
Absolutely
if you
not.
hadn't done that walkthrough, you would have been a little bit more hesitant, have been like, where do I go next? What target do I shoot next? Like, what's going to happen next? That walkthrough helps a whole lot. So that walkthrough applies to other aspects of like kind of life. So I think that's like one of the little comparisons that sometimes I'll make, and it kind of resonates with people.
So one other big, probably stereotypical topic that I do want to hit is holster recommendations for females. Every female influencer, page, instructor has recommendations and whatnot. What are some big holster recommendations you have in different styles of carry, specific for women? Because women, especially in this field, are much different than men.
Gosh,
to an arguable extent.
Right. So this is my simple opinion, right? It has nothing to do with like brands or anything, but like it kind of goes back to, you know, we talked about the cat ears, right? The gimmicky stuff that they use to market to people. The biggest thing I see all this kind of craziness going around Instagram. Oh, you need this, you need 15 different types of holsters because you're a chick and you're wearing different clothes. It's like, honestly, I wear a inside the waistband. Like I have a very like a solid holster that I know retains my gun. I know it's easy to access, and I know it has like a built-in kind of wedge so that it pushes it into my stomach a little bit more. That way I'm not the handle of my gun isn't poking out. I can still carry a Glock 19 every day. Not everybody has to carry a full-size gun, but what I'm saying is you don't have to have all the fancy. You don't have to have 15 fancy holsters for each different type of outfit. I would say for people that are looking to at least start concealed carrying, get yourself a really good inside the waistband Kydex holster, like a plastic holster. Get used to wearing that with like jeans or something like that. If you wear a lot of leggings, like a lot of leggings or shorts or like clothing that you don't necessarily have a belt with, I've found a lot of success with the Filster holsters because they have like basically a built-in belt with them, and you can pretty much conceal them under anything.
Is that the Enigma?
Yeah, the Enigma holster. I'm not even affiliated with that brand. I just own one because I thought it like when they first came out with it, I was like, hey, that looks like a good idea or whatever. But like that's a good way to conceal. Other than that, I usually carry medical supplies in my, those little bandolier like fanny pack bags. I usually carry my medical supplies there. That way it's not too bulky, and I put a flashlight in my back pocket, or I put a flashlight just somewhere on my person. But I honestly, I don't really buy into the concealed carry leggings and things like that, because first of all, it gets expensive if you have to pay $60 for leggings and you have to wear, if you want to conceal every single day, right? That's 7 pairs of leggings times 60. It's expensive, and a lot of times they don't have that same like level of retention and protection that the Kydex holster is going to offer. So if you can just keep it simple and get really comfortable drawing from the same holster and just learn to manipulate that with different outfits, that's how I do it.
And one thing I run into a lot when trying to discuss different carry methods and holsters and whatnot with, again, women in my life is that they have to realize that there is some sacrifice to wanting to carry. Maybe not as much now as the market progresses, but as a general rule of thumb, and this is even true for guys, that your actions of what you do on a daily basis and what you wear on a daily basis is dictated by you carrying a firearm. What you wear, you're not going to sacrifice carrying your firearm because you want to wear blah blah blah.
Yeah.
You don't want to give up that sense of self-protection and that reliability just because you want to wear something. There are priorities, and sometimes having priorities sucks. It does.
Yeah.
But that's a part of life, and if you're going to be in this, you have to understand and accept that to some extent.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not always gonna be comfortable. Like every day, like I'm gonna be real with you, especially like carrying a full size gun. Like concealed carry is not comfortable. It sucks. Like it takes a while to get used to. Like a lot of times I'll tell people when they first come in and they're like initially getting used to concealed carry, I'm like, stick with it for like 6 months. Don't give yourself any cheat days. Like concealed carry with every single thing you're wearing. Like don't let yourself stray from it. And then after about 6 months, you'll get so used to it where it becomes a daily habit, and that uncomfortable feeling kind of goes away because you've gotten used to it, right? You've gotten over that kind of like speed bump where it's a learning curve. So my advice for like kind of new concealed carriers would be sacrifice for a couple months, figure out what works and doesn't work. You might have to change your wardrobe just a little bit. I mean, there's a time and place, like if you're going out with your husband and you want to wear a dress, okay, adjust for that, right? Like that's where that feminine side might come out, and like, okay, tonight my husband might be carrying the gun, I might be carrying the flashlight and the medical supplies or whatever it is, because I want to wear a dress. That's fine. But at the same time, like if you're going out by yourself or you're going on a date with somebody you don't know, maybe that dress can wait. Maybe like you should wear something with a belt that night, and just getting used to having the feeling of that gun being on you at all times is like, it's something that you have to, it takes a while to get used to, and you just have to allow yourself to go through that learning process.
I will also want to touch kind of as we're talking about, this aspect of having that firearm with you at all times. I kind of want to talk on the grappling aspect a little bit, obviously, because you're very, very experienced with that side of things. And it kind of goes back to the cat ears and the pepper spray and all that kind of stuff. I find that a lot of instructors and teaching methods and whatnot are very cheesy and toxic that target women specifically.
Yeah.
You and I have both done jiu-jitsu, so we understand that there's a lot of reality to that kind of stuff. And what some people push is not so good and can really get you hurt. So, how does somebody find a trustworthy credible instructor or academy, whatever that might be?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. Like there's a lot of gimmicky stuff out there, and unfortunately, like so martial arts is a long-term game, right? One of the things that I always kind of say to people when they ask me about like the martial arts stuff is doing, I think maybe like, again, I'm not good with like remembering years and stuff, but I think I fought for around like 6 or 7 years, something like that, right? All those years of training did not teach me that I had the ability to go out and like kick anybody's butt or like defend myself against any size person. That's not what it taught me at all. In fact, if anything, it taught me my capability level, and it humbled me, right? And made me aware that I wasn't going to be able to I probably wasn't going to be able to just take a person that's 3 times my size head on. Like that's what it made me aware of. So a little bit of self-realization, but the most important thing it taught me is to manage my stress under pressure, right? So like when somebody is actively trying to hurt me, or somebody is actively trying to grab me, or grab my neck or they're on top of me or whatever, instead of blanking out and panicking, I know a little bit or a tremendous amount more about how I would react to that, like, and how to like calm myself down and think through things under pressure, right? So like in the cage, obviously you play by different rules. You basically like it's sport rules. It's a contact sport. But you still have somebody across that cage looking at you, ready to basically beat your face in. And especially if it's a big match or whatever, they really want to hurt you. So experiencing somebody really wanting to hurt you in a more controlled setting where you know you're not going to be like, there's no weapons involved or anything like that. Like, that's a good time to experience that feeling of being hit in the face or being sat on or being grabbed or whatever. You don't want to experience that for the first time if it happens in real life. Like, if that makes sense. Like, it taught me basically how to control my adrenaline levels. I think that's really, really important for women, because a lot of times, like, you look at like sexual assault cases, I guarantee you, I have no idea the statistics on this. I don't even know if you can measure this, but like, I guarantee you that a majority of like women that are sexually assaulted have never been grabbed like that before, or they've never been like pushed, or they've never been like hit in the face before. So the first thing that happens is they don't know what the heck to do, because their brain's still processing what's going on and how to react to it. So that level of training, like martial arts, is like, that's where the value is, I think. But to your point, to actually answer your question, sorry, I got a little bit off track.
No, that's fine.
I'm like, my brain will go like spiraling down the rabbit hole. But to answer your question, like, to find a good, reliable gym, it's going to first start off with the mindset of knowing that it's got to be long term. So like, you can go to any gym on this planet and spend 3 weeks there and you ain't going to get anything out of it. You can pay an instructor $5,000 to teach you all the cool self-defense moves he knows, but if you only do that once or twice in your life, you are not going to retain that information. So it's Absolutely. Like finding a good, reputable gym, first of all, starts with, when you walk in the gym, how do you feel? What's the vibe like? What's the atmosphere like? Do you actually get along with these people? Do you like being at the gym? Do you enjoy being there? Like, all of those things should be taken into account. Compare it to something like women go get their hair done, right? When you walk into a salon, at least with me, I know whether or not I like it from the point I step in the door and how they treat me. So a lot of it is atmosphere. And then, of course, the reputation of, like, what's that instructor's background? Have they taught women before? That's another thing, is like, martial arts for a very long time was not very inclusive of women. So a lot of instructors are very used to teaching men, and unfortunately, women learn a little bit differently because we have a lot more emotions. So you have to find an instructor that has either daughters or like has taught a lot of women before. It doesn't have to be a women's only class. Maybe it is a female instructor. Just somebody that's good with the female like kind of demographic.
And I think, and there's a point I want to make after this, but I think that you have to be aware of what you're looking for. If you're looking to get into some sort of martial arts from just the health and fitness side, and a little bit of self-protection, you don't want to go to a competitive team MMA club.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So you have to be aware of what you're looking for and find something that, meets that standards. And if you are somebody that's brand new, be careful taking on too much too fast.
Yes, yeah.
Because I know a lot of people who have jumped into too much too fast, and they've gotten themselves hurt, or the big thing I find with people is that they get burnout.
Yes.
And then they never come back. And that's not what you want to happen.
Yeah, it's exhausting. Like, you gotta take it a bit by bit at a time. And also on that point with the people, or with like beginners, right? Knowing what you're looking for. You can waste a whole lot of time at jiu-jitsu gyms. I love jiu-jitsu, but you can waste a whole lot of time there if you're not with the right instructor. Mm-hmm. I think, like, personally, I like a little bit of structure in it, right? So, like, I think it's important, like, when you walk in a jiu-jitsu gym, I think it's important that they have some type of fundamentals class, right? Because I wasted a whole lot of time when I first started out in a class that I had no business being in because I didn't know what to look for. And I ended up learning all these complex moves without even having the fundamentals under my belt. So later on down my little MMA career or whatever, I spent a lot of time fixing bad habits and having to go back to the basics and restart. Like, I had to restart a couple of times because I didn't have that good foundation. So it's like when you walk into a martial arts gym, first thing I would look for as a beginner is do they have a fundamentals class, and are they going to take the time to teach me the very basics before they do anything else? Because a lot of times I think gyms miss that.
One other thing to look for with that, specifically in jiu-jitsu gyms, if they don't have like a beginner's class and an advanced class, one thing that I really liked about one of my previous gyms, which was a Carlson Gracie gym, is that specifically for the evening classes where like the bulk of the gym students come to, you always match up with somebody, similar, belt as you, and let's say we're working half guard stuff. The instructor will give white belt, blue belts, hey, this is the move you guys are doing, and then white belt, blue belts, fucking run away. And then the advanced guys are like, all right, this is what we're gonna do, and everybody wants to do that, but you have to stay on track. So that's also something that that you can look for as well. Yeah,
and like one thing too is gym culture, right? So keeping yourself, like being aware of things, right? Like when you go into the gym, making sure that you're rolling with people that are aware that you're brand new and that they're willing to put the ego, like most of the time, the good thing about jiu-jitsu gyms is most of the time the ego is subsided the farther you progress down the belt line, right? So like if you're rolling with a brown, black belt or purple belt, whatever, they're not, they know that you don't know anything, so they're going to go very gentle and they're going to take care of you. MMA culture is a little bit different. They don't like, it's a little bit
no mercy there.
I'm gonna say that like that's not something to jump into, but at a jiu-jitsu gym they're very good about like pairing people up according to their skill level, meaning like they'll pair up like an advanced guy sometimes with a beginner because they know that the advanced guy can kind of teach the beginner at his own speed, or vice versa. They keep the beginners together so that they all learn at the same time. Like I've been at gyms where they kind of do a combination of both, and I think that's really cool.
And I kind of want to hit on the point of why for all of this. And most likely, in my eyes and my thought process when it comes to self-defense situations, whether you're a Muay Thai fighter, whether you're an MMA fighter, or you're a strict jiu-jitsu guy, it doesn't matter. 9 times out of 10 in a self-defense situation, you're going to end up in a position that is unfavorable for anybody, and it's not going to go how it goes in your gym. And one big thing that I hate about the jiu-jitsu community is that people are way too comfortable fighting from your back. It is not 50-50 if you're on your back. I don't care what belt level you are. If you are in a self-defense, real-life situation, if somebody is on top of you and your back is on concrete, that's not equal. That's not a fair fight. Doesn't matter how knowledgeable you are. And that's why I did not ever like fighting from my back, pulling guard, anything like that. You either need to have the ability to exit a situation if you need to, or finish a situation. And you're probably not going to do so from your back. It's because somebody's buddy's going to come up and kick you in the back of the head, or they're going to pull a knife and now you're fighting somebody that's stabbing down at you. Your back is not a place to fight from. It's okay to be comfortable from your back and have the knowledge to fight from your back, but your goal shouldn't be, I'll get to my back and then I've got him. That's the wrong mindset to have.
Yeah, I agree. And also too, like on that point, kind of like what I said earlier, is being aware that like obviously everybody knows this, but it's kind of good to talk about anyway. Like that sport jiu-jitsu and sport fighting is very different from real life, right? Essentially, all the rules that apply to sport fighting, like combat sports, basically it's like the opposite of what you would do in real life, right? So like in the cage, you can throw an elbow, but you can't claw. In real life, I'd probably throw an elbow and claw. Like it's like there's like things that you would definitely do on the self-defense side that you don't necessarily always get the opportunity to train in the sports gym just because of like rules and safety and like things like that. So it's good things to keep in mind. And sometimes a lot of times a good jiu-jitsu gym will have like other little break-off sessions where like maybe once a month they allow everybody to kind of come in. They'll talk about like self-defense, and they don't necessarily roll, but they kind of show you other techniques that can be used outside of tournaments and things like that. But like kind of like you said, more just you can use martial arts for whatever context you would like it to be. For someone like you who's like purely doing it for self-defense, right? You can train and your entire goal can be to not get to your back. for somebody like me who kind of does it for both, like I can pick and choose what kind of aspect I want to train. But if I'm training for a tournament, I might not necessarily care about that. I care more about points. So it's just like being able to register in your head that like this is why I'm doing it and this is the context I'm training for is very important. It's the same thing goes for shooting, right? If you're training for competitive shooting, it's a little bit different from self-defense, but you can still learn from both. You can kind of cross-pollinate on some skills, right?
And if you're a person that does, do jiu-jitsu or something like that for self-defense, even though it's not the same as a real life fight, I implore you to go to a local tournament and get in 2 or 3 matches and whatnot. And because the one thing that will happen at your gym is that you're going to start to understand how other people fight and how they roll.
Yeah.
But when you go to a tournament and now you're going against somebody from another gym that you've never met before, it's completely different. And it kind of throws you off a little bit your very first match. Later in the tournament, you kind of warm up a little bit. But that first match, you're like, wait a minute.
You're like,
what's going on here?
Yeah, what just happened? Yes, 100%. I agree. Like, it's like, and again, it goes down to stress level, right? Because, like, your first tournament, actually, I mean, for me, it was like any tournament, any match, whatever it was, it's like, there was definitely adrenaline there, and it's like most people do not, I'd say probably a strong majority of the population does not really know what true adrenaline feels like. So if you can get contact with that at least a couple times in your life, like that's really important. Like a little, like I kind of mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast, like I have a little bit of a background in more of like the adrenaline sports, like skydiving, bull riding, like things like that, where it's like I was in constant contact with like the highest level of adrenaline that I could like basically experience, and it got me very used to it. Like it got me like very aware of like how I act and how to control it. If you don't have that opportunity many times, the first time it happens, it's gonna be very hard to control it. So jiu-jitsu, like tournament level, like tournament style stuff, even competitive matches and shooting, it introduces you to that new level of stress that you might not be used to, which is, I think, really valuable.
And one other big aspect I want to hit on with martial arts is that, and I used to preach this to my guys a lot, even in the Marine Corps on the diplomatic side, is that your grappling abilities and your ability to regulate space and distance and all of that kind of stuff ties directly to your ability to either A, escape a situation, or employ some sort of self-defense weapon like a firearm. Like specifically with your grappling. If you're unable to escape, being able to better dictate a situation, not to get a submission while you're, street fighting somebody for your life, but being able to dictate and control that situation to safely and effectively employ that firearm. I'm doing that thing like with my hand right now where like I'm holding a pistol.
You're air gunning it.
I'm air gunning it. Being able to manage those types of situations to later employ better, or even if you're, a female that doesn't carry, and like go back to the flashlight thing you were talking about earlier, you got to get to that flashlight.
Yeah.
And if you're unable to manage space, manage aggression, anything like that, you drop in your hands and just trying to find your flashlight because you've never tried to find your flashlight before and so on and so forth, and you get hit in the face 4 or 5 times, your OODA loop is going to be thrown way off.
Yeah, or you're going to
especially if that's the first time you've been hit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure more than anybody else. Like, it's like the first time you get hit in the face, your brain's like, what just happened? Like, I don't even know what to do. Most people just freeze and look at you. So it's like, that's definitely important. And regulating distance is also something that you can proactively do, right? Before something even happens. So, like, going back to that kind of understanding of, like, using your voice, making eye contact, stuff like that, like, that's something people need to be keeping in the back of their minds is, throughout the day, I was talking about being aware of what you're consciously doing, maybe becoming a little bit more aware of your spatial surroundings as well. Meaning, like, when you're in a parking lot, take a look and see who's within 10, 15 feet of you. Like, start making notes of them, start observing them, like a little Kim's game, like, of, like, what they're wearing or whatever. Like, that kind of stuff is, like, proactive defense that will prevent you from having to defend yourself, risk your life, get in a lawsuit, go to jail, like all these things. It's like some of those things can be prevented, kind of like what my mom did on the trail where she just used her voice to stop whatever could possibly happen, I don't
know about you, but I actually kind of like getting hit in the face. Not as hard as people can, but I like sparring.
Yeah,
it reminds me that I am not as badass as I will continue to believe that I am, even
Yeah.
though I'm going to tell myself that I am. It's a nice reminder.
Yeah, it's definitely humbling, and it's like also it's a good stress reliever too. Like people forget that there's like a fun aspect to it. Like
Oh, absolutely.
it's a great time like tapping around with your friends. I mean, like as long as nobody like tries to kill each other, it's I really enjoy sparring. I miss it.
I'm not an individual that looks cool shadowboxing or anything. Mainly because I'm just a big meathead, so I just look ridiculous.
You put your hoodie on and like go to the corner of the gym.
Yeah. Well, Maddy, was there any other big topics you wanted to hit on? We've talked about a really wide range of stuff. What time are we at right now? Let's
Yeah.
see here.
We're an hour and a half.
Yeah, we're an hour and 24 minutes in right now.
Yeah, good stuff. No, I think the only other thing I wanted to mention is so for the February retreat coming up, right? Be having the 2.5 day retreat seminar or whatever you want to call it. I think it's February 24th through the 26th. It's going to be in Blakely, Georgia. It's going to be at Arena Training Facility, which is a 2,300 acre range that has like these super nice cabins that we're all going to be staying in. The retreat includes the training, which is self-defense training, the medical stuff, a little bit of hand-to-hand combatives, the survival training, as well as the use of force scenario stuff. All that's including as well as lodging and meals. And I actually made the listeners of this podcast a $50 off coupon. So if you use ECT on my website, if you're buying the February retreat, it will give you $50 off, which is I think a pretty good deal on it.
Hell yeah. I will definitely make sure to plug that to all the listeners. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I will say too is like I get a lot of questions about like, hey, I'm a brand new shooter. Can I still come? And I'm like, absolutely yes. If you're a brand new or advanced shooter, it doesn't really matter. I actually I basically split into two groups based on your prior training level. If you want to do like a private lesson online or something to kind of gauge your skill level, that's also an option. So we can split into beginner and advanced. So if you're a brand new shooter, totally fine. If you've been shooting for 30 years, totally fine. Come on in. It's a very open group. Bible studies and the religious aspect, we do make it optional, but we do also ask that you at least like kind of come in with an open heart, because that is the core of our mission, is to help spread the gospel while doing all these things.
Do you have any other, outside your Instagram, do you have any other like website pages or other social media pages people can find you at?
So I have my Instagram, which is, my handle is redletterproject.maddy, and then my website is www.theredletterproject.com, and you can read up on kind of like some other stuff we do on there. You can also go to the media content page and see some recap videos of like previous retreats. So there's a couple videos on there that are like 3 to 5 minutes long. You can kind of just see an overview of what they look like. A couple more like a little bit more information in depth, like what kind of gear you'll need and all that stuff is actually on the website as well. But besides that, I try to keep my socials pretty small, so it's just those two things.
Awesome. Well, Maddy, I really appreciate you coming on. I know you had, a long weekend and whatnot and big travel day today, so thank you for making the time for this.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. I appreciate the conversation. I love what you're doing as well.
Thank you. Hopefully we can get you a couple extra sign-ups for the February Red Letter.
Heck yeah, I would love to have you guys there.
Would you like to give, I like to do shout-outs at the end, so is there anybody you'd like to give a little shout-out to?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. So honestly, just the sponsors that have supported Red Letter from kind of from the beginning, we're very blessed. We have a couple major ones on board. We have Safe Life Defense. What they typically do is they'll give out 10 to 15 body armor panels to the ladies that attend the retreats. So usually it's first come, first serve. Whoever signs up first usually gets a panel. Then we have Hoist. It's a drink sponsor. They do an awesome job as well. We have Safariland. KGM's a sponsor of mine. They contribute a lot as well. And we have CBS Training Group, and then a couple other sponsors too. So I'm super thankful for them. They basically make the project as easy as it can possibly be. And I'm just like really appreciative that they're still on board.
Awesome. I'd like to give a shout out to Max over at Misfit Group. If you guys haven't checked him out, go ahead and do so. He's got a podcast as well. He's kind of hitting up the same way as I am, trying to push more on the civilian training markets and, kind of the modernization of training. So, and he's always been a huge supporter of mine. So thank you, Max. And then, so Max, I don't know if you probably don't know his page, but they are my favorite couple, him and his girlfriend, Emily, because they train together all the time. They go to the range, they grapple each other, even though Max is like 6'6", and Emily's like 5'3".
And
Like,
nice.
they are awesome. They inspire me. So shout out to you, Max and Emily, and then shout out to Justin, otherwise known as Archangel Tactical Medicine on Instagram. He had the Deliver Fund Range Day this year, which is actually where I met Maddy, and he's been a huge supporter of mine. He's also a firefighter. We send each other dumb Snapchats from the firehouse all the time. Justin, you are the man.
Justin's the man. Yes, he definitely deserves a shout out. That's the only reason I'm on this podcast, because we met. Oh, that and Lindsay, because we both know Lindsay. So Lindsay gets a second shout out.
I am very much looking forward to his 2023 events. I don't remember if he said he was going to do Deliver Fund again or do a different organization. It's kind of up in the air, but I look forward to it again nonetheless.
Yes, yeah, I'll definitely be there. I don't know exactly when it's happening, but I told him as soon as he knows, just let me know.
For sure. All right, Maddy, again, thank you. Much appreciated. Hopefully I look forward to, chat with you more in the future, and hopefully working together at some point in time.
Of course, yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, that is all I have for episode 14, The Red Letter Project. As always, guys, train hard, train often.
Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours.